Hey, hi, welcome to this video on tournament poker. Now, the number one question I get asked in my coaching group, Breakthrough Poker Coaching, is how dare you, Nick? That's not it. That's not the number one question. Number one question I get asked on tournament poker is why do I go card dead and what can I do about it? And I completely understand people's frustration when they ask that. I think it's a very natural thing to feel in tournaments. And if you can kind of empathize and if you felt that way, it's definitely not your fault. It's definitely a function of a couple of things that I'll talk about in a minute. But just so we're on the same page, what we're talking about is that phenomenon of just sitting there in a tournament and feeling out of control, feeling kind of helpless to do anything about your situation as your stack sort of slowly dwindles. And maybe you have like half a hand a couple of times, you have king queen, you miss the flop, that's another few chips gone, a couple more orbits, you don't have anything, more chips gone, the blinds go up, and suddenly you're shoving in your last 10 or 15 big blinds. It's very, very frustrating, and it can feel very disempowering and like, you know, you're not kind of bringing your skill to the tournament or anything, and then suddenly you're out and it's over. And that's obviously not what we want. That's not how we want to feel at the poker table. So I've got a couple of things that you can think about and actually start enacting straight away in order to get over this problem. There's actually three things, and you can tell that because I've written three numbers on the board before even starting to make this video. How prepared is that? Sorry, it's just that if you've ever seen any of my videos, you'll know that this is really new levels of preparation. So tip number one, if you want to avoid feeling card dead and feeling out of control in tournaments, is don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. Yeah, usual level of inability to write. So why, after saying it's a problem, am I now saying don't sweat it, don't worry about it? A couple of different factors. First of all, it's a very normal thing to happen in a poker tournament. There's a couple of reasons for that. First thing is, if you've got deep in a tournament, say 2/3 of the way through the field or something like that, then some things will have gone right. You'll have made some hands. You must have picked up some pots to get that far, otherwise you'd be out the door with everybody else. So that's going to balance out at some point. You're not just going to have great hands all the way through the tournament, or happy days if you do, but it's pretty rare. I think you'll agree. And then second of all, it's just kind of fundamental to the way tournaments are set up that you're going to be short of chips and short of hands at some point, because as the blinds raise and they get bigger relative to the stacks in play, there's more pressure on you to play. So that at the beginning of the tournament, you can kind of chill out, sit back, you don't have to play a hand if you don't want to. You've got 200 big blinds, there's nothing in the middle to win, so who cares, right? But that's not the case several hours in. Everybody will have about 30 big blinds, 40 big blinds, and you can go bust in any one hand. And if you sit there, very soon you'll have 15 big blinds, 10 big blinds, and so on. So there's much more pressure to find a hand. So what you have to make sure that you're doing is not kind of thinking, I'm going card dead because either I'm unlucky or I'm doing something wrong. It may just be you're having one of those spells in No Limit Hold'em where you don't get a playable hand or you don't get a good spot. So the first thing is not to worry too much about when I go card dead, like how do I do something about it? How do I change gears? How do I magically turn this round? Instead, tournament poker is about focusing on each hand and playing each hand to the best of your ability. And if you want to broaden it out a bit, playing the table you're at to the best of your ability. You can never actually play the tournament as a whole, right? It's not like a running race. There might be 60 players left in the tournament, but you can't gauge where you are against those 60. And if you're not far enough up, kind of make a really big burst. You can't do that because we're playing cards here. We're not running races, thank goodness. So you can only ever make the best decision based on the table you're at, the opponents you'll play against, your stacks, their stacks, and the hands you're dealt. So it's very important that you don't kind of force it in tournaments because you feel card dead, which is why I say don't sweat it. If you're going to spend time trying to improve your tournament game, focus instead on the decisions you make. Go over the hands you've played and spend some time worrying about that and making sure you're taking every advantage, as opposed to worrying about, I'm so unlucky I get deep in a tournament, then I go card dead, because it will happen. There's not much you can do about it happening in terms of what cards you get dealt, right? So don't focus your energies there. So on the micro level, don't worry about it too much because you don't want to kind of stress, force it and go out the tournament when you shouldn't. On the macro level, it's not really a problem with your play if you're just having spells without getting good hands. Now, having said that, there are some things we can work on. There are some things that we can actively do so that you don't feel this way at the poker table. And that brings us to point number 2. There's always going to be 3. Point number 2 is to be active. Be active. So, thinking again about how the tournament works, we know that the blinds are going to go up, an ante is probably going to come in. Critically, the blinds are going to become much bigger compared to the stacks. That means that there's a lot of money in the middle to win. So 2 things. First of all, it means you can't win tournaments, or very rarely can you win tournaments by just sitting still and waiting for big hands to come to you. That's not really how you make a difference or have an edge in a tournament. Second of all, the more money there is in the middle, this is just a general poker principle, the more money there is in the middle, the harder you should be trying to win it. So in poker, you should be trying harder to win pots later in the tournament than you are at the beginning of the tournament, as a general statement, right? So you can only do that, and you can only survive the rising blinds if you're being active. So what I mean by being active is really attacking those blinds when you get the chance. You should be incredibly active, especially from late position, from the cutoff and the button. You should be really, really playing a lot of hands. When it's folded to you, you should actually have a good reason not to play, I think. This is a good little mantra to get into. When it's folded to you on the cutoff or the button in the mid stages or late stages of a tournament, you should actually have reasons not to play as opposed to reasons to play. You should be playing a lot of hands, being aggressive. If there's any chance you can take down those blinds and antes, you should be taking it. And this is especially true if you're card dead. Because if you're card dead or spot dead, in that you haven't had good spots to play or anything like that, that means that you're going to have a tighter image. You might well have a much tighter image than your actual mindset, just because you haven't played for a few orbits. So the other players at your table will be thinking you actually play a little bit tight. If you happen to have moved to a table and been card dead for 2 or 3 orbits, then that's really going to give you a tight image, because people have got no reason to think otherwise. So be aware of those times where you have a tight image, and be even more active. You can even experiment with open raising from earlier positions, especially if there are tight players in the blinds and your table isn't too active behind you. You can do that any time when the tournament blinds get big. That is, experiment with open raising from early position as a steal. But you can particularly do it if you have that tight image. So when you go back and look at the tournaments you've played, or think back on how you're going to improve your tournament game, and you think, I hate those times when I get card dead, ask yourself, am I being active enough? Am I taking small calculated risks to maintain my stack, slightly build my stack at a time when I know the blinds are rising? That's very important. All right, tip number 3 is going to be a practical playing tip that you can start experimenting with in tournaments, and that is 3-bet bluffing. 3-bet bluffs. So we've found out how to make my pen work on the third one. So that's a bonus. We talked a little bit about just stealing the blinds, which is very important in tournament poker. And even though you know that, you're probably not doing it enough. But let's talk now about a play that is very, very useful if you are card dead for a period in a tournament, and that's the 3-bet bluff. So that's re-raising an initial raise, but not with a hand that you're doing it for value. So you want to do it with hands that kind of have some value. Stuff like ace high and king high hands are good, partly because you have some value and you can flop well if you're up against like a mid pair, but also because you have an ace or a king in your hand, makes it less likely that someone else has an ace or a king in their hand, which is nice. But also you can do it with stuff like suited connectors or other hands that play well. And really what we're trying to do here is take advantage of our tight image. So if you've been card dead in a tournament for a while, then like I said, you're likely going to have a tight image. And when you re-raise, so when you come in for a hand showing that amount of strength, players are going to give you more credit than if you had a loose image, right? So this is actually using your card deadness to your advantage. This is a great way to maintain your stack or build your stack, but also to take advantage of the fact that you have been a little bit card dead or a little bit less active in the preceding time. Now, you can do it at all times in a tournament, but especially when you've been card dead, look for those 3-bet spots. Really, really good if you're in late position. Really, really good if you're up against a player that's stealing a lot, because their open raise is going to be, comprising of a big wide range of hands. And ideally, you want to target players who open raise a decent amount, but don't call after they open raise. So players that are really raising junk and then not fighting back would be an ideal target. In terms of stacks, this 3-bet bluffing option becomes an option. I don't want a precise number on it because it does depend on how shallow or deep everybody else is. But in general, if you've got kind of 30 big blinds or more, you should be thinking about making this play as part of your way of stealing the tournament, of keeping competitive and active and building those chips. Obviously, there's lots more plays that you can use, but I just wanted to throw one at you to think about in a situation where you are card decks. No one wants to be in that spot. All right, I hope I've given you some value in this video and helped you with this very important problem. Now, I'm really excited because coming up next week, I'm going to give you a free set of videos starting next week, which really builds on this video and gives you way more insight into how you can turn around your tournament results, get consistent cashes, build a big stack more often, and really go deep more often as well, which I know is what you want. We're going to talk about this idea of attacking to win tournaments, and it's going to give you a ton of value. That starts next week, so look out for it. If you don't want it, you're not interested in receiving these videos, just hit unsubscribe on one of my emails. We'll still be friends. But if not, that's going to be coming your way next week, and I know you're going to get a lot from it. If you've enjoyed this video, please do like it on Facebook, share it using Facebook or other social media, and please leave me a comment below. I'm happy to discuss anything in this video or any kind of poker ideas you want to chat about. I will look and chip in. Get the word out if you've enjoyed it so we can get this video to as many poker players like you as possible. All right, I hope your tournaments are going great and you're enjoying them. I'm going to bring you some great value-packed information next week starting in those videos. Until then, I'll talk to you in those vids. Have a great time on and off the tables.